I really didn't think we'd have any more details to discuss on William Nylander until the deadline's come and gone and we either have a trade, a signing, or something more significant. But yesterday, NHL insider Elliotte Friedman dropped a pretty big statement that I thought was worth discussing. He indicates he feels even if Nylander signs, this will be his last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs and that he will be traded by the Leafs by the draft next summer at the absolute latest. We'll discuss the statement and his reasons for thinking that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, yesterday, Elliotte Friedman, NHL insider, works for Sportsnet, had a pretty bold statement on the Tim and Sid show discussing the latest on the William Nylander situation with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, of course, in the beginning of the segment, he went on to indicate there really weren't any real updates in the past week or so, that things have kind of stalled as far as news goes, and there's really not much to talk about. As we indicated last weekend on Saturday Headlines on Hockey Night in Canada, Friedman, along with his counterpart Chris Johnston, had reported that there was some dialogue still going on the contract, and they had believed that it was down to about $500,000 or less on the contract. And they were optimistic the Leafs would figure out a way to get him signed by the weekend. Now the rumors about them trading him kind of had died down a little bit. It was leaning more towards them getting a resolution on a contract. Now, of course, yesterday, he went on to indicate he feels the gap is closed even a little bit further, probably down to around $300,000 or so between the two sides, and that they feel that both sides likely feel the other will make their best offer as we approach the 11th hour near the deadline here on Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. So we're only just over 2 days away from that deadline. So most insiders, including Elliotte Friedman, feel that both sides here will likely give a little bit make their best offers to each other near the deadline and hopefully get something resolved and get something situated and signed to get Nylander back into the lineup. If you take a look at the likely proposed contract, somewhere around 6 years, north of $30 million for William Nylander, a $300,000 gap on an annual basis really is a small gap when you think about it. And, the likelihood, I think, of them coming to terms here and getting something done before Saturday's deadline is a real possibility. And I do think the odds are pretty good. I really can't see Nylander sitting out. I mean, we've seen lots of statements from Mike Babcock lately. And, of course, for his part, he's obviously involved with some of those things on the Leafs side. But really, I think he's trying to be very optimistic here that Nylander gets signed and gets back into the lineup. But really, what the big part of this conversation today is that Elliotte Friedman indicated on Tim and Sid that regardless of what happens here, regardless if Nylander sits out and they don't come to a solution on a contract, or even if he does get signed before the deadline, he truly believes that the Toronto Maple Leafs will trade William Nylander sometime between the signing and next summer's NHL draft, and that this would be the final year for Nylander as being a part of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, a big part of the rationale behind that is a couple of things. One is that the relationship might not be as good as it used to be, obviously because of all these negotiations. But more importantly, it's just from a math perspective. If you take a look at all the other contracts the Maple Leafs need to look after here, and along with what Nylander's looking for and what Matthews and Marner and everybody else is going to need to get paid, it is kind of a very challenging situation for the Maple Leafs to kind of keep everybody together. The other big part of this is that the 2019 restricted free agent class is going to be a big one. There's a lot of big names that have really proven themselves here during their entry-level contracts that are going to be looking for some significant big money contracts. And as some of those contracts start to get sorted out and signed, it's just going to push the value up even more. I'm going to put up a graphic here on the screen and kind of go through some of the more notable names. We've got obviously his Maple Leaf teammates, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Both of those guys are tearing it up this year. Marner, is one of the top leading scorers in the league. Matthews would be right there as well if he hadn't been injured. But obviously those two guys are going to be commanding big salaries. I mean, Marner's really proven to be, an upper echelon player in this league. You've also got Colorado Avalanche sniper Mikko Rantanen, has been having his turn here, is leading the league in scoring this year. Has really proven to be a really big part of that Avalanche line with Nathan MacKinnon. You've got Vancouver Canucks player Brock Besser, who's had some pretty solid seasons. You've got Winnipeg Jets sniper Patrick Laine, who he's had some huge games lately. Had a 5-goal game not long ago. Certainly a contender for the Rocket Richard Trophy. He's coming off some 40-goal seasons. I mean, Laine's been a tremendous Winnipeg Jet since he debuted here a couple seasons back, so he's going to be getting a significant payday. And certainly don't forget about Carolina Hurricanes forward Sebastian Aho. He's certainly having a breakout season as well, and he's certainly due to get a significant raise as well. Obviously, all these guys are in their final year of their contracts, and they're all eligible for extensions now, but it seems to be, for the most part, that they're kind of in that wait-and-see approach. We might see some of these guys get signed before the summertime hits. It's really hard to say. It kind of depends on how the player feels about it and how the team feels about it. I'm sure from a team perspective, some of these guys would probably rather have them sign now rather than wait longer, so as the time goes on, their worth is going to continue to grow as they have another fantastic season under their belt here. But from a player's perspective, it's almost better to wait and really show what you're really worth to make sure when you cash in, you get the most that you absolutely can. So all these guys are having fantastic seasons right now, pushing their values up. They're all playing. You know, unfortunately, Nylander's still on the outside looking in here, trying to get a contract sorted out. But as these guys get signed, that's just going to keep pushing everything upwards, and it's going to make it that much more difficult for the Leafs to continue to offer Nylander what he wants and keep everybody together here. But just strictly from the Leafs perspective, they have a lot of their own issues to look after here, and it will be very challenging to keep all these guys together. Right now, for next season, they have 11 players under contract, eating up $43 million of their salary cap space. So, you know, obviously that's a big chunk of the salary cap. Right now, the salary cap sits at $79 million. Yes, it is going to go up. Right now, they had estimated approximately 5%, but it could be more. There's certainly some other things that have gone on this year since that was last discussed to kind of push that up. You know, we're expected to get an announcement on Seattle being the 32nd team. They'll be paying a big expansion fee. That'll be coming through here likely by next week. You got all the announcements they made with some of the sports betting agencies as well. So there's certainly lots of positive things going on that could potentially push the salary cap even more than 5%. It could very well reach, 7, 8, or even 10%. So we could see a big jump next season. But even then, it's still going to be quite challenging. I mean, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, obviously the two other big players for the Toronto Maple Leafs that are going to need significant raises. I mean, it's really hard to say. I don't see Matthews taking anything under what Tavares has signed. Marner is certainly proving to be, arguably a lot of nights the best player on that team. So he certainly has an argument for a big money contract. Hard to say what he gets. I'm going to say at least 9, maybe 10. I mean, Marner is having a phenomenal year. And obviously, I don't know exactly what he's going to end up getting, but, he certainly deserves a huge raise as well. Then you look at some other guys besides Nylander. You still got Kasperi Kapanen, who's having a much better season, breaking out this year as well, playing a lot with Matthews in Nylander's absence. So he's certainly going to be deserving of a better contract. How much he gets, he won't get as much as the other guys that we just mentioned, but he's certainly going to be getting at least a pretty decent sized bridge deal. Certainly more than his entry-level contract that's expiring now. You've also got guys like Ron Hainsey and Jake Gardiner in the back end on expiring contracts. And even if you don't re-sign those guys, you need somebody else to replace them. Either way, another contract has to come in, and they can't have everybody replacing these guys on ELCs. I mean, to a degree, you can have some, but you got to have some experience in your lineup there. Plus, you've already got other guys in the forward group as well, like Per Lindholm only signed a 1-year deal, and he's done relatively well, I think, for the Leafs, so they'd like to keep him. He'll likely get a bit of a raise. You got Josh Levo, Andreas Janssen, another guy as well. So they have a lot to look after, and mathematically here, this is going to prove to be extremely difficult for Kyle Dubas to get all three between Marner, Matthews, and Nylander under contract anywhere near what they want. So that's kind of Friedman's rationale around it, that regardless of what happens here, if he sits out, he's going to be traded at some point, more than likely, and if he does get signed, that he still thinks that this will be his final year with the Maple Leafs, and that either during the summer or at the draft or somewhere before next season starts, that he would be traded to make room for the other contracts that they need to get done. And of course, if you haven't seen the clip from Sportsnet on the Tim and Sid show with Elliotte Friedman discussing all this, I'll certainly link it down below in the description, so you can certainly go check it out for yourself as well. Certainly a very interesting segment, to say the least. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts and comments on this situation. This is certainly just thoughts from Elliotte Friedman. He doesn't have inside information to say for sure this is going to happen. But if you do take a strong look at it here, mathematically, it certainly does make a lot of sense. So regardless if William Nylander gets signed or not, are you on board here with Elliotte Friedman's thoughts that he likely would be traded before the draft of next season, and this would be his final year with the Leafs, regardless of what happens here over the next couple days before the deadline kicks in? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.